Hello everybody, very good afternoon. I hope you're fit and well out there. In the next hour I'm going to be talking to a jockey who has had an illustrious career. He's won the Derby, he's won the Oaks, he won the Canadian International, the Hong Kong Vars, he's won a Shima Classic as well and a host of other big races, and he's still riding at the top of his game. One thing's for sure, he's won more accolades than his beloved Everton. He is of course Mr. Martin Dwyer. How are you, Martin?
I'm good, thank you, Angus. How are you?
Yeah, all well, thanks, mate. All well. How are the family and holding up and bearing up all right?
Just about. Nobody's murdered anyone yet. There's been a few threats, but we're getting through it.
Good man. What are you doing with yourself?
Bit of gardening, bit of running and walking the dog, and just really watching TV and bit of sunbathing. Like, you look like you've been doing a bit of sunbathing.
I've been doing a bit. There's not a lot else to do, is there, really?
No, we've been lucky with the weather, haven't we, so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Martin, we're going to go through your riding career to date and have a look at some of the horses and people that influenced your career. But first things first, how did you get into racing?
I was football mad as a kid, and then I really started getting interested in horses and ponies, and learned to ride when I was about 14, and I'd just made my mind up. I wanted to be a jockey, really. My dad loved racing. He always had it on a Saturday. It was always on the TV, and I just started getting interested in it. And my dad wrote a letter to Ian Baldwin asking if he'd take me on as an apprentice and see if I was any good. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, we'll talk about Ian Balding a little bit later on, a man who very much influenced your career. But for now, let's start with the first of the horses that you wanted to look at and talk about, and it's Slip Anchor.
But Slip Anchor has slipped the field for Steve Cawthon. He's really blazing a trail as he turned around Cattenham Corner. This is a sparkling performance. They've got over 3 furlongs to go. We know the horse stays, and surely Steve has stolen it. They've got just over 3 to go. One horse in the picture, and that is Slip Anchor. Steve Cawthon reckons this horse is the best horse he's ever ridden. He could prove it here today, because Law Society's in second place, Supreme Leader is third. Then comes Shadid, who's being pulled up at the rear of the field, but they've got just 2.5 to go. 2 to go. Steve looks right on Slip Anchor. This is a blistering pillar-to-post victory here. He's 8-10 lengths clear from the second horse, Law Society. Third is Supreme Leader. Theatrical, hanging under pressure, staying on his Lanfranco, but he's not going to get anywhere near his stable companion. That's Slip Anchor. This is Steve Cawthon. Steve's first Derby victory, ridden out to the post, staying home, coming home well. One horse race, and that's Slip Anchor. Slip Anchor the winner.
It was an amazing performance from Slip Anchor. Steve Cawthon said he was the best horse that he'd ever ridden. That include a firm he won the Kentucky Derby on, and he's one of the very few jockeys to have won a Kentucky Derby and to win an Epsom Derby. But why Slip Anchor? Why was this horse important to you, Martin?
Because I think this must have been the first race I watched on TV. I was 10 at the time. I remember my dad was watching it, and as I say, it was the first race I ever watched, and it really caught my imagination, watching the crowds, and I mean, you could hear the noise of the crowd there as they come round Tatton Corner into the straight, and the crowds of people and the speed they were going. So I was 10 years of age, and I actually made a decision, this is what I want to do, and I told my dad, yeah, I'd like to do this. So to think just over 20 years later, I won the race myself, but this really got me interested in racing, and I've watched this race a million times, and I followed Steve Cawthon. I was lucky enough to lead him up a few times when I first started racing, and I was a bit starstruck, to be honest. I think he's a fantastic jockey, and the way he rode this horse this day, it was a very, very determined, and he got the fractions right, didn't he?
Yeah, he certainly did. He made every yard of the running on Slip Anchor. So Cawthon was one of your heroes, was he?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I got to lead him up a few times, and I was in awe of him. And I used to watch a lot of his races when I started riding, and I was just struck with his ability to sort of. He was always in the right place. He always knew what speed he was going, and he was just very good at judging the time, the fractions, and I tried to learn as much as I could from him when I was younger.
So from that point on, after watching that scintillating performance, which surely would grab the attention of many, many young lads, did you then start following horse racing as best you could?
I did. As I say, I was only 10 and it was the first race I watched, but it really spiked my imagination and I really got interested in horses. But I didn't learn to ride till 4 years later. I was 14. In between, I still thought I was going to be a footballer, I think. But I was really interested. But where I lived, there wasn't really any horses about and ponies. No, that really, it was the first time I remember watching a race with my dad, and it really got me interested.
Yeah, was your dad a lover of the sport as well?
Yeah, he loved racing. He always had a bet on a Saturday. Always had a rolled up pull-out in his back pocket, and he was a bit like Jim Royal off the Royal Family, but he loved racing. He always followed Ian Baldwin's horses, and he just was a big racing fan.
Yeah, brilliant stuff, and a fantastic horse to get you hooked in the game. So that was Slip Anchor, one of the horses you wanted to look at. Let's move on to another brilliant racehorse, SELKIRK.
It's Rudimentary with SELKIRK running well just in behind him, and Ray Cochrane swinging off SELKIRK past the two. Rudimentary being challenged by SELKIRK. Over on the far side, putting in a run is Lahib with Flying Brave. SELKIRK takes it up now on the near side. It's SELKIRK going on from Lahib and Rudimentary as they race into the final furlong. It's SELKIRK clear of Lahib over on the far side as they race towards the line. SELKIRK being pressed all the time by Lahib, but SELKIRK's going to win it. SELKIRK is the winner.
The flashy chestnut with a big white face, SELKIRK, an absolutely brilliant miler, ridden there by Ray Cochrane when winning the Lockinge to Newbury. Did so in 1992, on the QE2 as well in 1991, the Challenge Stakes in 92 too, and he was placed in the Sussex as well. Martin, fond memories of him?
Yeah, for me, this was the very start of my career. I'd been in Kingsclear for a year or so, and it was a real exciting time for the yard and everyone involved. He was a smashing horse, and he was a superstar. He was a top miler, and I was lucky enough to be involved in his preparation work, and he taught me a lot. I used to ride the lead horse for him. Because I was light, I was always sort of riding the lead horses. We'd have a sort of 80-90 rated handicappers, and I was part of the process, and I really enjoyed it. And then to watch him race and win like he did, it was fantastic. But it was a credit to Ian Baldwin. It was amazing. I mean, I was involved in some gallops where we had two horses, so we'd have sort of I'd lead the first 4 furlongs as fast as I could go. SELKIRK would be behind me, and then there'd be a horse further up at halfway, and he'd jump in and set off and go as fast as he could. So I'd drop away, SELKIRK would go by me and follow the next horse, so it was a real end-to-end gallop, and that's the way Ian sort of trained him, and that's why, for me, he was such a good miler. He was a strong traveller, and then he could kick off the end of it and keep going. That's what made him so good. So it was really, for me, it was a real experience to be involved in that kind of preparation, and then to watch him run and do what he did. It was a good time.
And riding in those sort of gallops that you did at Ian's with these good horses like SELKIRK must have taught you a lot about pace and got you into race riding.
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. It was a real experience, and it was an eye opener to see it. And there's not many trainers I'm not sure would work like that now, but that's how Ian Baldwin did it. He made sure it was an end-to-end gallop, and because these horses, when they compete at the top level in the Group 1 races, they've got to at home, they've got to take the jacket off now and again and do a proper bit of work. So to be involved in it was a real experience, and like you said, it prepares you for later when you're going to ride in races, and you know what it takes and what kind of fractions you have to set and what tempo you have to set.
Yeah, Sussex Stakes, he ran a huge race when he was second to Marling, giving weight away. Thought it was a tremendous performance. He was a 4-year-old, Marling a 3-year-old, a very good horse trained by Jeff Ragg, and he just failed to give £10 away. But he lost little in defeat. We can see him here. He's some way back at this stage.
Yeah, Ray rode him all the time, and he knew how much he had under the bonnet, and you can see he's tracking his main danger. I think that's Marlin just ahead of him in the noseband, and she'd already won the Coronation Stakes at Ascot. She was a Group 1 winner, a 3-year-old, so she was getting the sex allowance and the 3-year-old allowance, so I think that just made the difference in the end. But what a lovely horse Selkirk was. I mean, the way he strides up here on the outside, he's such a flashy, good-looking individual, but he was just a great racehorse. Marlin was half his size, wasn't she, on the inside,
yeah.
But the allowance just helped her and she battled back.
Yeah, and all the ability he showed on the track and that fine turn of foot that he had, Martin, did he always flash that at home? Did you always know he was a good horse?
Yeah, I mean, he was a striking individual, and the times he came past me swinging on the bridle, I used to think, God, imagine what it'd be like to ride horses like him one day. I never rode him in a piece of work, but I rode a lot of his lead work. But yeah, I thought it teaches you about how good horses are, and you just think one day you might be able to ride some at the racecourse.
Yeah, inspires you to get yourself onto the racecourse and to better yourself. What was it like in the yard to have the likes of Selkirk around? What was it like at Ian's with horses like him around? There must have been a real buzz.
There was. It was a brilliant time. It was a real team effort, and you were involved in it, and you felt like when you had a runner like him, the whole yard was tuning in to watch, and it meant something to all of us. And it was, like I say, big team effort, and it was a learning curve for me, and to be part of it was just fantastic. But all it does, it, like you say, will eat your appetite for when you start riding and what you're trying to achieve.
And no doubt in some of those gallops that you were involved in, Ray Cochrane would be involved as well, Martin, and I guess you learnt a lot from him.
I did, yeah. God, look at that picture. Where did I get that tie from? I know. Yeah, I was fortunate enough. Ray Cochrane, he was a great jockey, great tactician. He always did his homework, and it showed. It showed when he was riding. But I was lucky enough to meet him. Like I say, he used to come down, he used to ride Selkirk, he used to ride work, and before I'd even had a ride, I knew him, and he'd give me advice and talk to me. And then, so it just helped that when I did start riding as an apprentice, he was a face in the weighing room that I already knew, and he kind of took me under his wing. He was such a good person for me. Ray was a bit like a Roy Keane. He was well respected within the changing rooms and within racing, and he knew what he was talking about. And I learnt a lot from Ray. He really looked after me, took me under his wing, and he just he was teaching me things. I remember being upside him in a race at Sandown one day, and he's telling me how to ride the track. And I think we set off at I think it was a mile race or a mile and a quarter. And when we got to the bend, the first bit of the bend, he's shouting at me, right, steady up. And he said, when you can hear them swearing behind you, you know you've got them in trouble. And that's exactly how it was. And then we waited till the foot of the hill, and he kept saying to me, wait. And he said, right, go. And then me and him had a battle for first and second, and the rest never got involved. So it's things like that. Like, you need a senior jockey to teach you. I mean, there's jockey coaches nowadays, but back then, for me, it was Ray Cochrane. And
you need to finish the story. Did you beat him?
I did, yeah. It was only a neck. I think I had something like 8 stone 2 claiming 7, and he had top weight, but it taught me how to ride Sandown.
Yeah, and I guess when you go to the weighing room for the first time, for the first few months of your career as an apprentice, it can be quite a daunting place, really. So to have someone like Ray was really important.
Yeah, because you're turning up at 17, 18, and it's quite daunting. You're seeing these seasoned professionals you've been watching. So to have someone on your side and in your corner, it's a great starting point. And he always used to call me Scrawny Kid. If you did something wrong in a race, he'd be there waiting for you when you come in.
Would he? So he followed when he followed your career. He watched your rides in races that you weren't involved in, and would he give you a call and have a chat about them?
Yeah, he'd take you to one side and say, "I seen you ride yesterday. What were you doing?" Or you know, he'd talk to you and he'd pull you up. And equally, he'd put me forward for trainers that he rides for. I remember at the time, once I progressed a little bit, he was riding for Julie Cecil. She was a star to ride for. And Ray pulled me to one side, said, I've got you riding a kids' race at the end of the week, don't mess it up. And so I rode that and it won. And then I started riding a lot for Julie Cecil. I think I rode her last winner, actually, before she packed up. But so it was great to have somebody to teach and help you, but also to put you forward, push you forward for other trainers and help you move forward.
And what was it about him as a jockey? Why was he so good? What made him better than most?
I think tactically he was very aware of what was going on in a race. He was very astute, wasn't afraid to do something different. I remember him crossing at Lingfield under the trees one day. Nobody had done it. I think he was one of the first to do it, and won him the race. And his determined grit. I remember watching him ride the Dante one year for Ian Baldwin, a horse called Border Arrow, and he got tightened up on the rail and he literally drove through and bounced the other horse back off him and held his position and finished. I think he was second or third, but a lot of other jockeys might have accepted defeat and taken back, but he literally bent the rail to get back through. He was a very tough and hardy kind of person, and equally in life and at the races as a person, he was a real hard, the kind of man you'd want to have with you in the trenches. I mean, don't forget, he was the one who pulled Frankie out of that awful plane crash, wasn't he?
At Newmarket, yeah. It sounds like he was
So no, Ray was a good person.
Yeah, it sounds like he was a real mentor for you, Martin, as you went through your career. I always remember him. I remember him on Chief Singer, obviously. I always remember him riding that horse. He was brilliant on him. But I always remember him for being a patient jockey. He used to always take his time. You would never say about Ray Cochrane if you were watching races, "Oh, he's gone too soon on that." That's not something you would ever do.
No, that's true. I think, yeah, he could judge things to perfection. Sometimes you get there late. When you're watching back on Selkirk, he knew how well he travelled and how much he had under the bonnet. So he would always try and time his run to be. He would go through the gears. That's what Ian Baldwin always used to say to me. You don't drive a car. You don't go from first gear to fifth gear, do you? You gradually use each gear and get the most out of your car. The same you do with a horse. And I think Ray used to do that perfect. So that's where I learnt from him.
Yeah, you still in touch with him, Martin?
Do you know, I haven't spoken to him for ages. I don't think anyone does. He goes off round. He's got a mobile home and he goes off round Europe and things. And I think he lives in his greenhouse, potting plants and stuff. So I haven't seen him for a long time.
Yeah. It's hard to see anyone at the moment, to be fair, but I just wondered whether you were still in touch with Ray Cochrane, a very important man in your life and a very important horse in Martin's life as well, was the brilliant sprinter Loxon.
They've gone through the first furlong and a half, and it's the red cap of Bold and Flashy leading, striding on by neck to Sea Gazer, the horse with the big white face. Noseband on the right is Loch Song, behind these Million Freddie Lloyd. Paris House, the grey, is there. College Chapel is just taken off his legs. They've only got two to go, and it's Loch Song in the lead from Paris House on the right. Bold and Flashy has done his running. Keen Hunter behind these, and Leicester on College Chapel on the extreme left is out of shot as they come inside the final furlong. And Loch Song and Paris House in between these two. College Chapel's coming late and fast, but it's Loch Song who's going to hold on. Loch Song makes all Paris House, College Chapel. That's the 1, 2, 3 LBO 4 Blighton Lad 5.
In the Jeff Smith colours, Loch Song winning the Nunthorpe Stakes in 1993. Her CV was immense. 92 Stewards Cup, Portland Handicap, Air Gold Cup. Nunthorpe in 93, Abbey 93 and 94, Palace House Stakes 94, Temple Stakes 94, King Stan Stakes in 94 as well. What a mare she was, Martin. It must have been great to have had her in the yard with Ian and the rest of the team.
Yeah, definitely. She was a wonder mare, wasn't she? It was great to be part of it at the time, and I've put her in my list for all the same reasons as Selkirk, basically. It was a real team effort. We were all involved, and I led a lot of the work. At the time, Jeff Smith had a lot of horses and he had a lot of sprinters, and I used to go as fast as I could, and then she come sailing past me. I've never seen a a sprinter with speed like her. She was just unbelievable. She had 2 gears, and it was either flat out or very steady. And she actually ran away with Frankie every time he rode her, to be honest. He never rode her work because he couldn't hold her. So it was always, there was a lad called Francis Arrowsmith, do you remember him?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah, he used to ride all her work, and Frankie just got her on a race course, and she actually, you know, she bolted a couple of times to post. She could be quite unpredictable, but she was unbelievably fast. She was so quick. And it taught me a lot about sprinters. She was completely different to SELKIRK. And again, I used to ride a lot of the lead horses for her. But it taught me a lot about how to contain sprinters and harness the speed. Frankie was brilliant on her on a race day because he just got the fractions right. He didn't interfere with her early. And the way, I mean, Frankie on locks on coming out the stalls is a lesson to any young jockey of how to ride a fast breaker. And he'd get the race won by halfway, but she was just a pleasure to be around and to watch her win. Yeah,
she was always electric out of the stalls. I guess at home she was in some ways difficult to train in that she wanted to possibly do too much in the mornings. She's always probably pretty keen about her work.
Yeah, do you know what? I think Ian trained her in a different way to SELKIRK. She didn't do as much work, and she did a lot in the swimming pool. I remember she used to swim a hell of a lot, and I think she really enjoyed swimming. She used to love it. And she had her routine, and there was a guy at the time, Reg, who was, he must have been pushing 70, and he used to ride her on most days when she was just quietly hacking about, and he used to ride her in old cowboy chaps. He'd ride her full length, and she was so happy, and she used to hack around, and then on a work day, Francis Arrowsmith would ride her. So it was either flat out or very slow.
Yeah, so 92, 93, 94 was when she was at her peak. Where were you as far as your career was concerned when she was in the yard?
I was kind of just getting going. I only started riding, I think, at the first couple of rides in 93. So I was just starting to ride as a apprentice, and I'd met Frankie. Frankie was riding a lot of them as well. And so I was just kind of following her career, being involved in all the work, and I'd just getting a few rides myself, and I wasn't riding anything nearly as fast as locks on.
No. You mentioned it, Ian Balding, who masterminded her career and the careers of so many good horses. You must have quite a lot to thank him for in terms of your career, Martin.
Definitely. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today without Ian Balding. My dad literally dropped me off there when I was 16. He said, "I haven't got any petrol money to come back and get you, so don't mess it up." But I nearly did on a few occasions. I've spent a lot of time in his office getting a right telling off, but they were probably all deserved. But Ian and Emma Balding, they've been so good to me, because I could barely ride when I turned up. Didn't really know much about racing, came from a completely different background. So, but he just taught me so much, and he was really good. He took so much time. I'd go racing with him. He talked through everything, and I used to ride the hack. I used to ride old Knock Knock and canter up alongside him on his hack, his Hunter, and then I gradually progressed into riding proper racehorses and then riding work, and him and Emma just taught me so much, and they were real hands-on. It was he'd call me into the office and watch replays of races I'd ridden in, and it was a real old-fashioned apprenticeship. I worked really hard, and he was great, and he just kept my feet on the ground as well. He was good at doing that.
Yeah, just
I remember once.
Go on.
I remember once I was just coming to the end of my claim. I just lost my claim and had a great year. Things were going really well. And I had my first group winner at Ascot for Ian, won the Cornwallis, and I was top of the world. And I won the race. He was delighted. And I got back that night, and he called me and said, "Can you come over to the office for a chat?" So I rang my dad. I said, "This is it, you know." I said, "He's probably going to offer me stable jockey job or a big retainer or something. This is going to be good news." So I strolled over to his office with a spring in my step, and then I got there, sat down, and he said, He said, you need to decide whether you want to be a jockey or a clown. I was like, what? He said, if you want to join the circus, join the circus. I was like, what? He said, what was all that about waving your whip in the air, crossing the line? He said, these horses, these owners pay a lot of money for these horses. They're very valuable horses. You're jumping around like an idiot. He said, you need to have a think, and if you want to carry on and be a jockey, you need to behave yourself and stop being a clown. So I walked out of there, my dad rang me up, how'd you get on? I said, oh no, nothing, didn't say much.
Good advice, I guess. Why was he such a good trainer? And he brought on a lot of young apprentices. The Baldings, of course, are known for doing that. So they must have a setup that really works. So first of all, though, why was he such a good trainer, Ian Balding? Well, I guess just he had the experience, and he knew his horses inside out, and he trained. He had a system, but I think he trained them as individuals as much as anything. But he was always keen on really pushing on and working his horses and getting them really fit so they could maintain the level of form. I remember him galloping. He had a cup horse one year, a really good horse called Grey Shot, and he'd gallop him over 1.6 miles, 2 miles. And not many trainers do that. So when he got them hard fit, they could run all summer. And but he really took his time with everything he did. It was he left no stone unturned. He'd do his work list. His work list would be like a work of art. He'd write it out the night before and then photocopy it, and we'd all get to look at it, and we knew what we were doing. But he'd get up in the morning and walk on the gallops before he galloped them. He put everything into it, everything into training. He strikes me as the sort of man as well, with yourself as an apprentice, that if you got some praise off him for a particular ride, you knew that it was very well deserved.
Well, that's it. Like I said, he was good at keeping your feet on the ground, but equally, he was very good at lifting you when you needed it and having a chat with you.
You nearly rode a classic winner for him, didn't you? Because Casual Look won the Oaks in 2003, but Ian had just retired and Andrew taken over.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sort of Andrew took over on when she was a 3-year-old, so it was Andrew's first year training, which was fantastic. Yeah. It was great to ride Andrew's first Group 1 winner, first Classic winner, and Ian was there on the day, and it was he was a bit shocked. We were all a bit shocked. I remember the interview they did, and Claire was reporting for the BBC, and we all got a bit emotional. But it was an emotional day. It was a great day to ride a Classic winner. I'd come close the year before. I finished third the year before, and it was a dream come true for me. And there's Ian in the background. So he'd handed over the reins to his son, and he'd had a Classic winner in his first season. Yeah,
but Ian had played a big part, a big role in Casual Look's success, no doubt.
Of course, he trained her as a 2-year-old. I rode her in the Fillies Mile. She was second, and we always knew going into as a 3-year-old campaign that she'd be a Classic contender. So I'm surprised actually Ian let Andrew take over.
She came up against some good horses in the Guineas, didn't she? She ran in that, I think it's the Russian Rhythm 6 Perfections Guineas. And she didn't run too badly in that, but clearly she wanted a bit further.
Yeah, it was a good lineup. Yeah, she was doing her best work at the end, and she just got tapped for toe and outpaced in the dip, and they got away from her. They were real good field that day. But when we were crossing the line and going up onto the heath, she was still full of running. So I actually said when I came in, she must have a great chance in the Oaks.
Was that a momentum changer for you as a jockey, winning a Classic? Did it change things dramatically for you?
Yeah, absolutely, because they're not easy to win, and I'd come close the year before, and I was just starting to step up a bit and get better rides and ride in some big races. But to actually win a Classic, it took a few days to sink in, and it was a bit of a shock. But I think I had 3 winners on the day too. I won 2 of the other group races, and it was a fantastic day, and it just really felt like my career was moving forward at that point.
Yeah, okay. We will move forward with another horse I'm sure means a lot to Martin. Phoenix Reach.
Powers Court and Phoenix Reach are both well back as they spin around the turn. 500 metres left to go. Omicron against the fence, tackled by Rascala on the outside. Marahel is looming up 3 deep to tackle those leaders. Collier Hill between them. Gray's in is deeper out. Jerry Mix between runners. Phoenix Reach is trying to wend his way through. Rascala hit the lead. 300 metres out. Phoenix Reach into the clear. Gives chase to Rascala. Gray's in on the outside with Powers Court. It's Phoenix Reach going up to Rascala at the 100 metres mark. Phoenix Reach takes the lead. Draws a length and a half in front of Rascala. Collier Hill is third. Phoenix Reach. Phoenix Reach wins the Shahima Classic 2 lengths.
Yeah, he's a brilliant racehorse, a real globetrotter, Phoenix Reach. He won the Canadian International as well. That was in 2003, Hong Kong Vase in 2004, and that Dubai Shima Classic in 2005, called home by Terry Spargo. He was a grand horse, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a great horse for me. He took me around the world and back. We went everywhere. We went to Japan, Singapore. We were second in the Singapore Cup, and I won 3 Grade 1s on him in Canada. And Dubai, as we've just seen, and Hong Kong. He was brilliant. It was very brave of Andrew. He took him all around the world, and it paid off to win 3 big races. And it was a real experience for me, and he gave me some great days, Phoenix Reach. Really, I mean, I particularly did enjoy the Shima Classic because we were drawn wide on the outside. I think we were drawn 14 or 15, and I walked the track with Andrew in the morning. I said, we're going to have to bite the bullet and drop in, because we can't win going wide, and I'll never get in if I run straight from my draw. So I ended up taking a pull and dropping to the back of the field, and luckily they went very quick. But he was a very good horse, and he came through. He cut them down and came through well at the end.
Looked like you wanted to celebrate with the stick in the air, crossing the line, but you remembered what Mr. Balding had said to you.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. It's often worse when you think you're going to get praised and then you get...
I know.
There's right, Andrew, look.
What did you learn from riding abroad?
It gives you confidence. I remember going out to ride, I think it was a Japan Cup or somewhere, and I really felt quite nervous. I mean, it was like 100,000 people, and I was like, what am I doing? This didn't feel right. And then I had to have a chat with myself and say, do you know what, you belong here, you should be doing this. And it makes you grow up, it makes you more experienced, and it makes you, if you can keep a cool head, and once you're in the stalls and once you break, if you can just apply everything you know to the way you ride anywhere else in the world, then you can overcome anything and you can achieve anything.
And of course you're mixing with other top-class international riders, getting to know other riders and other ways and other styles.
Yeah, absolutely. You get to experience different things, and you see how different international jockeys do things. But I firmly believe if you apply your trade in England, Ireland or France, you can ride anywhere in the world.
Yeah, indeed. Phoenix Reach, it was a beginning of a superb career for Andrew Balding, wasn't it? Because we talked about Casual Look in 2002, but then Phoenix Reach came hot on the heels. What a start that was for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think there must have been a bit of pressure on Andrew to start with when he took over in 2003, because he's taken over from his father, and big boots to fill. But straight away, he hit the ground running with Casual Look, and he's proven it when he gets a good horse. He knows what to do, and he's not afraid to take chances. He's not afraid to run horses in races other people might not, and he's not afraid to travel. He's been all around the world, Australia, everywhere. And his attention to detail is equal to his father's.
Yeah. Did he follow his father's methods to the letter when he took over?
I don't think so. I know he wanted to do things his own way. I think I remembered a few little arguments along the way, but he had to be his own man, didn't he?
Yeah, and he's certainly become his own man throughout the last few seasons. He's a tremendous trainer in his own right. Andrew Balding. That was Phoenix Reach, who took Martin all around the world. And the next horse we're going to talk about is one he'll be very fond of, Persian Punch.
Jardine's Lookout coming at him, the yellow cap on the near side. Here's Swing Wing joining in as well. Followed further back then on the outside by Sentinel, but Persian Punch is still fighting on. They've got 2 furlongs to go in the Lady O Goodwood Cup. Persian Punch in the centre. On the near side it's Jardine's Lookout. The far side is Swing Wing. Behind them is Savannah Bay, then Sentinel and Boreas right down the centre of the course. But it's still Persian Punch, the roars of the crowd for the veteran. But he's being grabbed now by Jardine's Lookout on the near side. Jardine's Lookout goes a neck up. Persian Punch, can he pull it out of the fire again? He's fighting back. He's coming back at Jardine's Lookout. He forges to the lead. Jardine's Lookout coming at him again. Persian Punch has just won it. Persian Punch has won the Lady O Goodwood Cup.
That performance under Martin sums that horse up, don't you think, Martin?
Absolutely. I'll tell you one thing, after 5 weeks of lockdown, I wouldn't be fit enough to ride him now.
Yeah, you had to work pretty hard on him, didn't you, from a long way out?
Yeah, he was that type of horse, wasn't he? He was so gutsy and so determined, but he was equally very one-paced, but you had to push him on. I used to literally go as quick as I could and then from halfway start pushing him on, and then when I get tired at the end, he takes over and he just keeps giving. And horses come to take him on. That race in particular, the Goodwood race, there's horses taking him on a long way out, and he battles each one off, and he always just keeps pulling his neck out. His head seems to get longer and longer, but the public latched onto him because he was such a great horse to watch. I mean, the noise of the crowd that day at Goodwood, I remember we pulled up round the corner, myself and Darryl Holmes, we weren't really sure who'd won, so we're waiting, couldn't hear the announcement. But when we heard the roar of the crowd, I think we knew Persian Punch had won. But it was a pleasure to be part of his story and just to ride him. It was quite a big thing to ride him. I always felt a bit nervous riding him because you've got the racing public watching you. You feel quite a responsibility.
Yeah, indeed, he was well loved by the racing public, and his record speaks for itself. People forget things like the fact that he was placed in a couple of Melbourne Cups as well, 1998 and 2001. He finished third on both occasions in Melbourne, so he was one heck of a horse. He really was. He
was. I mean, he never won a Group 1, but
no.
There aren't many Group 1 races for staying horses either. There's only a couple a year, and he came close. I was second one year in the Ascot and the Gold Cup. But he was a great horse, he really was. But I think that's why people loved him, because he could, some days he could just not perform and finish down the field. Then he could come out the next week and win. So that's why I think people latched onto him. He's a real public favourite. And I don't think anyone would have got the most out of him like Elsie did. I don't know how he did it. I never went down to where he was trained at Whitesbury, never rode him work, but wherever else he did, it kept him going for all them years, and he was just a great horse. Well, he's definitely my favourite horse.
Really, Elsie's a brilliant dual-purpose trainer. He's proved that over the years, hasn't he? No doubt about that. Let's have a look at the Jockey Club Cup that he won. He won it actually 3 times, and no surprises as we join them. You're rowing away, Martin.
Yeah, this was a good day. I mean, this just shows what the horse was like, because everyone behind me, they're all sat waiting, and they all want to have a crack at him, but equally they don't want to take me on too soon. I think that's Pat just behind me, and they're all taking the time. That's Johnny Merton in the green colours, and they want to come and beat me, but they don't want to take me on too soon and force me on, and I've just got to keep rowing and keep pushing him forward, keep the revs up. But each horse comes and has a go at him, and he just keeps pulling it out of the bag.
You're definitely headed by Millenary down on the inside there, aren't you? And you look like you'd be 4th at best at that stage.
I know they come past me, and Richard Hill's just given a crack across his nose by accident for good measure, and that seems to rally him on even more. So he's come back here, and I've got Richard Hill's now, and I've just got Pat on the inside on Millenary. Just got him. I remember pulling up, and Grandad was, I can't say on air what he called me, but again he knew then that I'd beat him with the noise of the crowd.
Yeah, very tight, wasn't it? You just got the better of Millenary in the closing stages, and again that's what Persian Punch was was good at. He just would never give up, and he'd just keep on going. And a nice reception when he came back in. People loved him.
Yeah, he had, by this stage, he had his own fan club.
Yeah.
People adored him. I mean, there's a statue of him at Newmarket, and there's one at Goodwood. I remember after winning the Goodwood Cup on him, I turned around and came back to the shoot, and the lad who looked after him, Dickie, was there to collect me, and I said, hold on a second, and I just took him down in front of the stands, just spur of the moment, because I thought it would be a nice thing to do, and I took him in front of the stands, and people rushed forward to the front rail and were putting their hands out to try and pat him, and it was that's probably one of the best moments of my career after the derby. It was the roof nearly came off in the stands at Goodwood that day, but I just took him down there and let him have a walk around in front of the stands and let the public see him.
How did your association with him come about then? How did you end up riding him for Elsie?
Because at the time, Hughesy had been riding him and been very successful on him, but then he'd run a few poor races. I think Hughesy said he got better retire him. I think he told him to retire him. And they said they'd give him one last go in the John Porter. And at the time I was riding quite a lot for Jeff Smith with Ian Balding. So they said they'd give me a chance on him. So I rode him in the John Porter, and I think I finished third on him. And they said, hold on, we'll keep him going, and that was the start of it. So I was very lucky. But it all stems back to the very start. Like I said, I used to ride horses work for Loxon, and so I developed a relationship with Jeff Smith, which has been really good over the years. He's been really good to me.
Yeah, so Persian Punch provided you with some of the highest moments of your career and probably the lowest moment at Ascot in 2004.
Yeah, that was really sad, wasn't it? It was, but in a way, it was probably a fitting way for him to go out at the Ascot and doing what he loved to do and gallop away. And yeah, it was very, very sad. It was a tough day for me. I remember turning to the straight. I'd been pushing him along for quite a while, as usual, and he was still in contention. We hadn't dropped away, and then he just seemed to wobble a little bit and then shout and holler, and I knew something was wrong. So I eased him up and trying to pull him up, which is never easy, pulling a horse up when in a full gallop, even though they've got something wrong with him, and he just came to a standstill. But it almost felt like he let me get off, and then as soon as I got off him, he dropped to the ground and took his last breath. So it was, really sad, but he went out on his shield.
Yeah, he did.
Every warrior should do.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some very, very happy memories of Persian Punch. Let's move on now to, well, a horse of a lifetime for Martin, really, Sir Percy.
Horatio Nelson still finds his path blocked by Opera Cape at this stage, and Kieran Fallon weaving around, desperate for some room as they go inside the final 2.5. Palace Episode now spying a run. Kieran Fallon brings Horatio Nelson through to try and get a passage. It's blocked again. Red Clubs and Opera Cape then towards the outside. Sir Percy inside the final furlong. Opera Cape switched again. Horatio Nelson into the dip, the far side. Sir Percy. Sir Percy's come through the lead from Opera Cape. Horatio Nelson, they got first run. He sees his unbeaten record slipping from his grasp, and Sir Percy wins the Darley Dewhurst.
Sir Percy winning the Dewhurst as a 2-year-old, Martin, and then of course going on to success in the Derby at Epsom as a 3-year-old. To win the Derby must have been a boyhood dream.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say that hasn't already been said? But if we go right back to the start, when I watched Slip Anchor in '85, to think 21 years later I won the Derby myself, it was, again, it took a long time to sink in. It was a special moment. It's one of the biggest, well, probably the biggest race in the world, and we knew we had a live shot going into the race, and it was just unbelievable to win it.
Tell us about the race, Martin, because you were some way back turning in, but you were down on the inside, and you got a dream run for Epsom, really. You don't often get a run like that on the inside.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed riding at Epsom. I've always had a lot of luck there, and the race didn't go as I planned. I got shuffled back, but it was a big field that year, and he was still full of running in the straight, but I had to motivate him, get him going, and then, as you can see, the closing stages, I could see Dylan Thomas ahead of me, Johnny Murtagh. They were just drifted off the rail, And I knew I had one chance. It was either kick in up the inside and try and win, or drag him up the camber to the outside, and I'd have probably been an unlucky loser. So I just went for it. But the gap looks a lot bigger there, doesn't it?
You get a bus through there, Dwyer, couldn't you?
I'd have been an idiot if I hadn't gone there. But you know what the camber's like at Epsom, Angus. Some jockeys make the mistake of trying to fight it. If your horse is leaning down the camber, you've got to keep going forward. So many jockeys try and pull them up the camber to come round. You've just got to keep going forward, keep your momentum going. And I could see Dylan Thomas was tiring. He'd been in front for a long time, so I had to go for it. It was all or nothing. And fortunately, I just got there on the nod. But what a good horse he was, Sir Percy. And it was such a story, this build-up, because he got injured after the Guineas. And it was touch and go where he'd make the Derby, and it was only a week before we galloped him at Lingfield, and that was the day we made the decision we were going to run him. Marcus and his team had done an amazing job to get him fit again. He was really quite badly injured, only muscle damage, but it was. But Marcus liked to take him away and galloped him. I think that's what he did with Nashwan when he was involved with Nashwan. So it was it wasn't a perfect Derby preparation, but he got him there on the day. But it did seem like it was going to be impossible. And I got injured the night before as well. I nearly missed the race. I had a fall in the paddock at Bath the night before evening meeting, and I had sore ribs. I thought I may have cracked a rib or something. So I was full of painkillers and strapped up.
Yeah, dearie me, you nearly missed the biggest moment of your career. Can
you imagine that? I mean, yeah. But it was touch and go, because I was in a lot of pain. But there was no way I was missing that ride, that's for sure. So just thankful it all. And he nearly never went in the stalls either. And he'd never done that in his life. But he stopped and wouldn't go in. And the starter said, "This is your last chance." And I thought, here we go again. And I put a blindfold on him, which he'd never had one on either.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to get struck by lightning next.
Oh dear, at least you got the run up the inside, Martin.
Yeah, that's true. I got the look where I needed it, didn't I?
Was there did you ever, for one split second, ever think of switching? Or did you always say, I'm just staying here and I'm just going to pray it stays open?
Well, I remember I was watching the race unfold in front of me, and they'd gone quick. Johnny Mercer had committed quite early on Dylan Thomas. We'd gone pretty quick, and then we'd started the race unfolded as soon as we turned into straight. And so when I was kind of making my run, horses in front of me were really getting tired. So it's easy to take the gaps when you got tired horses in front of you. Because I know if Johnny Mercer had any more petrol in the tank, he'd have closed the gap on me. But I could see he didn't have much left. So I thought, right, I've got to take the chance. I had to do it. But sometimes you just go on instincts anyway. And like I've said, the camber's pretty severe. And if the horse is leaning left anyway, which he was, you've just got to go with it. Yeah. If you try and fight it and pull him up the camber, you lose momentum. So it was just do or die, really, wasn't it, in the end?
Yeah. What were the celebrations like after that, then?
Went on for about 2 weeks and spent the prize money.
Got rid of the lot, did you?
We had a good go anyway.
Yeah.
No, the night we ended up in the Queen's in Lambourne. The Pakenhams had a bit of a party there, but we were all looking at each other. We were all in a bit of shock, really. It wasn't until the next day that the day after that, we could really have a proper go at it and a proper party, because it just took 24 hours to really sink in what we'd done.
Yeah, and in terms of your career, that's the biggest moment, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I've been very lucky. I've been some good horses, but yeah, to win a Derby, it's something you dream of. Like I say, going back to watching Slip Anchor, to think I could actually do it. And I was delighted as well, because I won it before the Tory. He kept ringing me that night after the Derby. What's it feel like? What's it feel like? Honestly, he was a pest. And then the next year he was riding authorised, and it was red hot favourite, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And the pressure was on him. And the build-up, Frankie was harassed by the press for weeks, and he'd never won the Derby. A bit like AP with the National. So I knew he was feeling the pressure. So the night before the Derby, authorised Derby, I rang him up about 11 o'clock and his phone's switched off. So I just left a message on his answer phone, tick, tock, just to wind him up.
Did he ring you back?
He didn't mention it until after the race was over.
Oh, right.
And he said, I knew that was you, and then I can't repeat the rest.
Brilliant stuff. Just a quick word for Marcus Tregonning. He's a man you've had a pretty close association with throughout your career.
Yeah, he's been really good to me, Marcus. I started riding for him not long after he took over from the major. Marcus gave me the chance on good horses straight away. He had faith in me. I wasn't necessarily riding in big races. The first time I rode in the Classic was for him in the Oaks, and I finished third. And he's given me so many opportunities, and he's such a good trainer, Marcus. And he was instrumental in the training of Nashwan and horses like that. So he knew how to train a good horse, and if he gets a good one, he knows what he's doing. But he's always had a lot of faith in me, always supported me, and we work well together too. We have a lot of fun, and we work very hard, and we both want to get the results. But he's a great trainer of a horse, Marcus. I remember when he took Naef out to run in the World Cup in Dubai, and then they changed the plans last minute. Wanted to run him in the Shima Classic, which is switched back to the turf, and Marcus was not happy because all his prep had been done on the all-weather. So on the day of the Shima Classic, Marcus took the horse onto the track on the turf and galloped him on the day of the race. How many trainers would do that? Because he wasn't happy. He hadn't been on the grass for so long. And I remember the clerk of the course in Nadal Sheba back then wasn't happy about it, and but he did it, and he went on and won the race. But that's Marcus. He leaves no stone unturned, and his attention to detail is second to none.
Yeah, well, he had a tremendous grounding, didn't he, Marcus Tregonning? Let's move on to your final horse. It's a really good sprinter, lightning fast, Stepper Point.
So they race on towards the end of the first couple of furlongs, and Stepper Point and Martin Dwyer in the lead. Fountain of Youth is second on the outside for Shamie Heffron, and James Ian between horses. Robot Boy towards the rail. Sir Maximilian Master Speaker, and they're followed by Gare Extortionist and Russian Soul. They're racing on with a furlong and a half to go. Stepper Point right on the stand side leads from Fountain of Youth, followed by Jamesy. Sir Maximilian comes next. They're racing inside the last 200. Stepper Point in the lead now from Sir Maximilian on the outside, racing in second place with Fountain of Youth and Jamesy, but Stepper Point's clear, gonna make all and win by a good 3 to 4 lengths under Martin Dwyer.
That was the Flying Five win at the Curragh in 2014 under Martin. Another fast sprinter to talk about. Martin, why did you want to include this horse?
Because Stepper Point is one of my favourites. He was around for a while, won some nice races on him, and he was a cracking horse to ride. He was very quick. I won the Beverley Bullet on him. I've just seen him win there at the Curragh. He's won there twice actually. I came close to winning a Group 1 on him twice. He was second in an Unthorpe and the King's Stand to Soul Power, who was a good sprinter on his day, and it was a shame he didn't quite. If he wasn't around, he'd have had his Group 1 winner. But he's such a fun horse to be around and to ride. And trained by my father-in-law, William, and owned by Clive and Debbie Edgerton. They've got a lot of horses in training, been very supportive of me in my career. And Stepper he's just a favourite. And he got a bit of a following as well, because he was around for quite a while. He's one of William's favourite horses. But he was just such a dude to ride.
He was lightning quick out of the stalls, wasn't he? He was very fast.
He was fast. I mean, you've seen him there at the Curragh when he was... Actually, I think I got in trouble there for crossing the marker poles. I didn't even know there were marker poles in the Curragh. And I think I got in trouble for that. But he was so quick out and into his stride. And again, when he was on form, he was hard to catch. He was a good horse.
Yeah, I think he won 10 times in total, and you won on 7 of those occasions you were on board, so he's a horse that you got to know very well.
Yeah, like I say, I knew him inside out, and some days he wouldn't perform, and other days he was just when he was on form, he was a fast horse and he was hard to catch. So just a bit disappointed we never landed a Group 1 with him, but we came very close at Royal Ascot, but he was a good horse. I really enjoyed riding him. That
second in the Nunthorpe in 2014, you were really unlucky not to win, because Hughesy got a dream run on Soul Power. Soul Power was always a hold-up horse, wasn't he? And he was dropped right out, and that's the year when he weaved through and just plonked his nose in front right on the line, and you were so unlucky to get nabbed.
I know, tell me about it. I watched it back a couple of days ago, and still couldn't believe Hughesy came from where he did and got me. But that was Hughesy at his best, really. Yeah. He suited that horse, Soul Power. So he won in Dubai as well, Soul Power, didn't he?
Yeah.
But he was able to travel in midfield and didn't like getting there till late. And but he was always still full of running. But if you hit the front too soon, I think he's pulled up a bit. So Hughesy timed it perfection, just nabbed me on the line. It was gutting, really, because I thought we deserved to win the Nunthorpe, and we were very, very, very close. And he battled, really. That's what he did, Stepper. He could race prominent or on the front end, and he'd battle horses off. And on those 2 races, he beat the rest, and then just got nabbed late on. So yeah, very disappointing.
And nice for your father-in-law to have a good horse as well.
Yeah, exactly. Keep him happy.
Yeah.
He'd probably blame me for them runs, getting beat.
He's a hard taskmaster, isn't he?
Probably. He can be.
Martin, you have ridden in
I'm only joking. He's pretty good.
He's a good man. You've ridden in a halcyon era, really, as far as jockeys are concerned, aren't they? I mean, you shared the weighing room with some of the best jockeys we've seen. You've shared them, Kieran, Frankie, talking about Ray Cochrane a little bit earlier on, Richard Hughes. It must have been a pleasure to ride against them all.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing, isn't it? I'm probably one of the few left. Jimmy Fortune as well, and Hugh. They were all very good jockeys and all had different strengths, not many weaknesses. I mean, Mick Cannan, to ride against Mick that taught me a lot to start, in the early days watching Mick Cannan. And Frankie is just unbelievable jockey, isn't he? He's just a freak of nature, Frankie. I mean, I watched him do a plank for five minutes or something stupid the other day.
Did he?
He's so fit for a man of his age. Yeah, he must be nearly 60, is he?
Just a bit more. I'd go up a bit. 62, isn't it?
Yeah, possibly. But no, you're right. I mean, Pat Edery.
Yeah.
He was what a legend Pat was.
Yeah, so it's nice to share the weighing room with those guys. I suppose it made you a better jockey, really, because you'd have to be, you have to be right on your game to beat these guys.
When you're riding against them day in, day out, yeah, you have to think about what you're doing, and like I say, you think of Johnny Murtagh, and you're riding in a race in Newmarket against Johnny Murtagh, Pat Edery, Mick Cannan and Hughes, there's everyone, there's so many good jockeys that, yeah, you learn things, you pick things up from them. Even now, I still watch jockeys now and think, how did he do that? How does Frankie always end up in the right place? Ryan Moore always makes it look like it's effortless.
Yeah. But you're still going yourself, still going strong. Going to carry on riding for a good while yet?
Yeah, of course. Why not? What else am I going to do?
I don't know. You could buy a greenhouse and do what Ray Cochrane does.
Buy a camper van.
Yeah. Right, Martin, we're just about run out of time. Thanks very much, mate, for sharing your racing life with us here on Racing TV. We will see Martin again soon, hopefully once racing resumes. I wish Martin well, and I wish you well too. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.